Hi, and welcome to the 92nd TiddlyWiki Hangout. I'm Jeremy Ruston, the inventor of TiddlyWiki, and I'm joined today by Mario. Mario, would you like to say hi, introduce yourself, say where you're from, and tell us something about your involvement with TiddlyWiki?
Hi, my name is Mario Pitsch from Austria, near Salzburg, contributor to TWclassic with themes and plugins. Having a look at TiddlyWiki 5, I think since the very beginning, I had a look last time, and after Jeremy opened the GitHub repo, I did some issues at the very beginning.
Yeah. I think you probably have issue number 1. I will again check that.
Yeah, I think it's not issue number 1, but I'm very close to the beginning. So,
well, great to have you here, Mario. Thank you for joining us. And this week's Hangout is chiefly remarkable for me failing to give anybody any notice. So I'm particularly grateful to Mario and Steve for coming. Steve, just say hello, introduce yourself, say where you're from, and something about, or something more about your involvement with TiddlyWiki.
Okay, hey, good morning, or good morning to where I am, good afternoon to where you guys are probably. Steve Schneider, I'm at the Suny Polytechnic Institute in upstate New York. We used to be Suny Institute of Technology, so I'm if you've seen me around on the community, I'm Steve Suny, and I'm the Suny IT professor who makes all the students use TiddlyWiki. I will be launching teaching a course again in the spring. I've taught it once or twice before, called Designing and Writing Interactive Texts, and we do a deep dive into hypertext, and we use TiddlyWiki as an example. That's an exemplar of the theoretical and practical applications of hypertext. Indeed,
Steve's been a great supporter of TiddlyWiki since the very early days, and I think one of the pioneer users. You were using TiddlyWiki Classic in a very, very early incarnation. Well, it's great that you could join us, so thank you very much. What we thought we'd kick off with today is something that Steve's been working on, I think, maybe for at least 6 or 9 months that I've been seeing the occasional version of this. I'm obviously going to ask Steve to show it, and he'll introduce it, but my introduction to it is that functionally what Steve's done is he's taken the tiddlywiki.com content and added a layer over the top. So that in itself is interesting, that the text starts out scaffolded as an annotation of tiddlywiki.com. For me, as a reader, experiencing what Steve has done, I actually don't really see the tiddlywiki.com content, funnily enough. So I only see that kind of layer of snow over the landscape, and the landscape that maybe shapes the snow just ends up melting away. Bad analogy, because it's the snow that would melt away, isn't it? Anyway, Steve, as he said, is an eminent academic in the field of hypertext, and I guess I shouldn't reduce your academic, particularly in the field of hypertext, I guess, is the thing that's interesting to me. And what Steve is about to show you is, I think, a really fascinating fusion of maybe 2 quite different perspectives. One is a really glorious attempt to write down, from my point of view, some of the things that make TiddlyWiki special, using the kind of careful wording and rigor that I would associate with an academic. So it's very clearly written, concise, pithy definitions of such simple things as writing, which, TiddlyWiki's documentation doesn't pause to define writing, and yet it turns out to be extremely interesting to think about the definition of writing, in this context of thinking about hypertext. So on the one hand, and I've said this to Steve before, so hopefully he won't be too offended by my pointing out this duality, but there's this sort of academic perspective that's taking notes from the side, if I can put it that way. It's sort of observations and naming things. But there's also bursting through this deep, passionate sense that hypertext is important, and that even though hypertext has gone mainstream, that we're missing out. And of course, it turns out then that I think Steve is actually tackling, in a way, the most interesting questions. So somebody who's not a hypertext obsessive like us might say, but we've had hypertext for 20 years, what's the problem? And it's only really by analyzing the affordances that we get with a true, or with a wiki-style hypertext environment, that perhaps we do get a sense of what we're missing. So, Steve, I'm sorry, I've done what I frequently do and given a ridiculously long introduction. But as I say, what you're about to show us is a great favourite of mine. So I'm really looking forward to hearing it in your words.
Okay, so I'm not a Google Hangout person. I click on screen share, and it picks my screen.
It offers to share individual windows, but I've always shared the whole screen.
Yeah, so now. Sort of pop up. And now we should be seeing my.
Now we can see your screen. Yes.
Okay, so so this started out. I don't know how to describe exactly what I'm doing, but I think what I'm doing is creating an integrated course platform that allows students, or participants, as I'm trying to call them, participants in the learning community, to engage the material about hypertext in a hypertextual environment, and to respond and reply and contribute to it using hypertext techniques, obviously in TiddlyWiki. The TWT is quite an unfortunate acronym, but what it does do is it allows me to play with these 4 words of text, hyper, wiki, and tiddly. And they kind of, they're supposed to narrow, I guess. Text is the broadest, hyper, wiki, tiddly is the next. And I'm just going to do a very brief introduction on those, just so that you've got it. So text is just basically the kind of corpus, the notion of a corpus, a large body of text. You could consider the entire web as a single text. That doesn't really help for most people, so we really look to something a little bit smaller. And I ask students to develop a corpus sometimes for their assignments, and so it could be one of the ones I'm working with, it can be quite large, but I'm working with one that's audio content. About 50 hours of audio content is my text. And others, you could imagine the Bible as a text, or the dictionary as a text, or any collection of documents as a text. And then I want to broaden it to talk a little bit about hyper, and this is very preliminary. But when you do some of the work with Nelson, Ted Nelson's hypertext, he meant hyper as in hyperspace, and that helped me quite a bit because I never quite knew what hyper meant of hypertext. It means multiple dimensions, of course, and not non-sequential, but multiple dimensions. And that's quite interesting. So we're working with a text that can be viewed in multiple dimensions. Wiki, and as we do, and this is again early, I've done some work, but I haven't updated it here, but Wiki, I think, Jeremy's older interviews and from Ward Cunningham's initial work, means quick. And there's a great Ward Cunningham definition that I just don't have in front of me because I wasn't planning to do this. But basically, it means quick, and I think it's the smallest available text editor or something like that, that Cunningham defined Wiki as. And what I'm trying to emphasize in here, given the word TiddlyWiki, is that Wiki does not mean collaboration. It could, but it doesn't necessarily mean. So I want to go from text, the broadest, to hyper multidimensional, to wiki quick editors, and then we end up in Tiddly, which I have nothing in there yet because I haven't interviewed Jeremy. But I think Tiddly means, there's a definition of a tiddler as the smallest unit of text that contains semantic content, something like that. It's almost like a phoneme. But I want to introduce this whole concept of text hyper wiki tiddly to suggest that the tiddlification or tiddlywikification is using a wiki to achieve hypertext to help us understand broader texts. So that's the kind of the big overview introduction. And what you're looking at here is what will ultimately be the textbook, which I don't like that word book, obviously, but the place, the platform where my participants come to gather their materials, to learn the things that I teach, and then they will write in their own TiddlyWikis, their assignments or their projects. What I want to walk through at a theoretical level is the notion of, these are in the wrong order, is that I want to get into the idea of practicing what I call practicing hypertextuality. So that means reading hypertextually, thinking hypertextually, and writing hypertextually. I usually go reading, writing, thinking, but obviously I have to learn how to do sorts here. And what's important to me is that we understand that ultimately most people are readers, relatively few are writers. Most people are readers, but when you read hypertextually, it involves different techniques and different ways of engaging in the practice of reading. And when you write, what I'm mostly teaching about writing, and when you write hypertextually, you have to use a different set of techniques. And underlying it all is this notion that eventually we might actually be able to talk about whether people can think hypertextually. The work that I've done with hypertextual techniques, I've tried to identify, I'm up to 7. I'm trying to keep my list a little small. These are the specific techniques that I've identified through the research on hypertext. These are the things that people do when they're writing hypertextually. So you have to learn, I usually start with linking, the most basic, of course, and then tagging, sorting, filtering, and then transcluding. And I've recently, just in the past 2 weeks, added templating and versioning to this list, which I think are specific techniques. I think, I'm not sure about them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those 7 words, whether I've got the right ones, am I missing anything, but these are supposed to be a set of techniques that we can teach. And so somewhere else I've got a whole, what does filtering look like, what does linking look like, what does sorting look like, how do you template, how do you transclude, what does versioning mean? And what I want my students to do, the participants in the class, is engage in these 7 techniques using TiddlyWiki, and then they actually self-document their work. So when they link to something the first time, or when the assignment is to create a link, they use the technique to put their code in and say, here's my code that shows I'm linking. So I want them to be very conscious of their code work. And the course that I'm planning for this spring is based on the idea that it's a learning community. And so I've got credits, 2 courses that students actually pay for, and we grant them credit like a normal university. So my graduate course is IDT 590, the undergraduate course is COM 375, and just out of curiosity, that class is even stranger. It's got 2 hybrid sections, so students come for 1 hour a week. The rest is online, so I set aside an hour a week to meet with them, and I set aside an online section, an hour a week, to meet with students online. The graduate class has a similar setup, although there's no required online time. And then what we're doing is running I don't think it's really a SPOC, a small private online course. Sorry about that phone. Just 1 second. Pat, I'll have to call you back. I'm in a video conference. But it's really a MOOC, but I didn't want it to be massive, so I'm going to call it a SOOC, a small online open course. And what we want to do is essentially, I'm going to borrow Jeremy's idea of a Hangout, which, by the way, I've implemented in the graduate program, so we have a weekly Hangout. Wednesdays at 10, we're going to hang out, do what we're doing now, although I think that I'll present a coherent, laid out plan. We'll talk about text, we'll talk about hyper, we'll talk, sort of like a regular course. The students who are paying tuition will be able to participate in that in that 1 hour Hangout if they want to come, or they can watch it later. And we're generating content through an open course that is then feeding into a closed course. And that in and of itself is, I think, pretty innovative. I haven't really asked permission to do that, so I'm just going to do it. I don't know if they're going to let me do it or not. But if I ask, they may say no, so I won't ask. And that's my learning community. So again, professors, hangers-on, everybody who's interested in it are welcome. The students who pay for credit will get their credits. They'll get their assignments graded and returned. And depending on how large the open course goes, the commitment isn't the same as it is to the students who pay. So I want to create this learning community. I don't think I have much of a course calendar. Oh, I've got something going on there. I've just begun to lay out the weeks. Doesn't look like I've done much. I've got some stuff in there, but you see the idea is that there's a topic for a week. We focus on a particular practice, and then I want the students to do something each week, I think. And this is my basic process for building a course, and so I'll just keep adding to it this is pretty early for me, November, for a course that begins in January. And then I have, yeah, right, and then I have begun to, I guess that's here. I'm so used to tagging. I just want tagging back. And I know I can get it, I just haven't gotten it yet. And what I've done so far is begun to think about how you start, like what's the introduction to TiddlyWiki, and then I've developed a set of software that they're going to use. Obviously TiddlyWiki. I like students to use Jing to do screen captures because I want some visual content, and I like screen captures, and I like Jing because you can customize it so that it writes TiddlyWiki code directly in the Tiddler into the buffer. Zoom I use instead of Google Hangouts. Our campus has a license. It records real easily. It's got some other features that I like. And then I think I'm going to use Dropbox as the main spot for people to keep their wikis. I did an experiment with GitHub this semester, and I think it's just way too complex for, I'm talking like, college juniors and seniors who are not technically oriented. So I think Dropbox everybody gets. And so that's about as far as I've gotten in what this class is going to look like. The other thing, and just to give you an idea of what you're looking at now, this TWT is something that I think I want to write. It's a book. It's got standard references, a few of them so far, and as Jeremy said, it's built on top of tiddlywiki.com, so that as I get to start documenting and describing how you do something, I can just draw on all of that documentation. It's right in my wiki. So I think there is a little bit about how I started the thing here, and where some of these ideas came from. I don't know if you've ever read the book Memory Machines. It's really good, and it's got a great chapter on Nelson. So I've been reading that, and I've been thinking about writing. And Jeremy, I think, inappropriately identified me as a hypertext scholar. I've never actually published anything on hypertext, but this is sort of like a new career for me. So I'm more of a political scientist by training and by habit, but I've abandoned that field now and adopted this as my new field. And I'm beginning to think about conference papers for that get submitted in the spring. But it really started a lot when I was reading this book, Memory Machines, and I try to dedicate myself to actually writing hypertextually every day, and just only use TiddlyWiki basically. And then I came across some of Jeremy's documentation of TiddlyWiki, and he does have this really interesting view of hypertextuality. I kind of do this mashup, and that's about it. And that's my documentation of what it looked like. We don't really know how to do that yet, but I'll get better at it. Looks like these are all the ones I've added since I've been playing, and so they're not fully integrated yet. But I do have these kinds of things like writing links. I don't think that's here. This is all coming out of another presentation that I did last year. It's this kind of work that I'm developing, right? So, like, what is a write? What does it mean to write a link? How do you actually show that to people? And obviously, it looks like this is actually this is still TiddlyWiki 5. It was written from TWclassic, but so I've got that kind of idea that you can show people how to write links, and how do you write a transclusion? It's lost its image.
Well, let's see.
Oh, I've been moving things around so much, and that I keep losing my
This looks
stuff.
like it's a saved tiddly space, so you may have saved the HTML file without the associated images.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So there's some yeah. So this isn't quite presentation ready. It's too bad because it's a great image. It's probably still on TiddlyWiki on TiddlySpace, as it is, of course. Oh, these appear to be broken too. Oh well, you know how it goes, right? Yeah.
This is consistently broken. There was a chunk of text you showed me about the word writing that I remember being rather struck by. In the THWT.
Yeah, it's going to be here.
Yes, here we go. The cognitive process of describing signs and symbols in order to convey meaning. One aspect of that I really like is ties into something I've said a few times in the Hangouts, that I'd really like TiddlyWiki to be a great tool for people who work with custom notations. And I always go on about my delight when I discovered that choreographers have a notation for writing down human dances, which is pretty extraordinary, I think. And so I love the idea that there might actually be other fields of human endeavor that would also benefit from their own unique encoding notation system. And yeah, TiddlyWiki, a hypertext environment, seems like a great place to explore that. And I really like the way the definition of writing here isn't confined, whether purposefully or not, it isn't confined to, I'm not sure what the word is, speech. I mean, to what people would normally think of as writing. Text, that's the word.
Text,
yes.
yeah. And
yes,
what
sorry, you said it much clearer, yeah.
Yeah. What I want to get at, though, is something that you talk about, and I've seen it several places, and I don't remember where, but you talk about the grammar of writing, or the punctuation of writing is incorporated into the text, and that's the second sentence there, the inscription of opportunities. But from a writing perspective, what you're doing is you're creating opportunities for readers to move text, or to create movement, which is very different than what you do when you write a linear text. You don't create those movements. Even if you put footnotes in, that's about as far as you get, footnotes and indexes. But beyond that, obviously, but you know, with links and filters and all that. So that's where I'm headed, and I'm quite excited to be announcing this. I wasn't planning to announce it today, but I'm more than happy to do so. And I will share more in the TiddlyWiki group and other places that you all suggest. And I'm hoping that we have, like, you know, maybe 10 or 12. I'm a little afraid if we have 100 or 200, but I don't think I have to worry. You know, maybe if we have 10 or 12 people who are not enrolled in the course, who are interested in it, and I'm going to recruit a few of my own as well. I just think it would be quite interesting, and I'm hoping that it yields enough work in the first couple of months, January, February, that I can support a grant proposal which is due in late March to figure out exactly how to use TiddlyWiki as an innovative instructional IITG, an innovative instructional technology, and the G is for grant. So the Suny System has an IITG program, Innovative Instruction Technology Grants, and I'm hoping to use, and demonstrating that there's an existing community is very important to those grants. And the idea is to create an innovation that can spread throughout the Suny system. And just by very, very brief description, the Suny system is a system of 64 individual colleges and universities throughout New York State. It's the largest system in the world, 600,000 students, 40,000 faculty members. And so the system is providing these grants to try and get its faculty to create innovations that then spread through the system. Everything has to be open source and shared. And the TWT also potentially becomes a book or something like that, a textbook, an open text that can get shared And Suny's also interested in MOOCs, so they have a deal with Coursera, but I'm kind of want to use TiddlyWiki as a MOOC platform. So that's my brief overview.
Well, there's a couple of things. Mario said something very interesting in the sidebar. When you were talking about the list of hypertextual techniques, Mario suggested maybe brainstorming needs to be the very first one, and that made me think actually maybe there's even another dimension of which brainstorming is a part, which is that it seems that although you've captured in that list the activities, the primitives that one manipulates in order to do things in a hypertext environment, it seems as though a hypertext environment suits, if that's not quite the right word, supports the brain when it is in a succession of quite different modes. So that brainstorming mode, or what somebody I worked with once would have called it the stage of divergent thinking, where you purposefully allow your thinking to be open-ended, and you know, if you're minded to do so, you might use creative techniques to try and encourage yourself to think of more options and to think the unthinkable and all that kind of thing, narrowing right down to what the same person would have called convergent tasks, or what you might think of as implementation tasks, where there's far less exploration involved. So I guess, yes, that's the axis that changes, is the degree of exploration, and some of the activities that we perform in TiddlyWiki are highly exploratory, and one doesn't know where they're going to go. And some of the activities that you perform are highly, highly convergent, and that maybe there's some kind of progression between those states that we go through, and maybe some other tools might be better at different parts. I mean, if it starts with brainstorming, I guess it ends with printing or presentation or something. And for sure, there are tools at that end of the spectrum that support printing and presentation, and don't really provide support for brainstorming.
That's interesting. I'll have to think about that. My initial response was, well, no, that's like something that's part of all sorts of writing and reading, but on the other hand, so is linking and sorting and tagging in some level. But that's really interesting. It's almost like mapping. Yeah.
I wrote it just as a reminder, because it may be similar to your, as you said, as your writing stuff, because writing is one of your bigger, let's say, points, introduction points. But as I use TiddlyWiki most of the time of brainstorming, then I start refactoring, linking, tagging, and all this stuff comes as the next point for me. And brainstorming is the first part, and then probably after I do some refactoring, then there follows some writing, which really makes sense for me. But brainstorming at the very beginning is just connecting the loose ends, and then you have the writing process, which gives all the stuff a sense, so that you really can read it, and it makes also sense to other users.
Yeah.
There's a similar cycle. It's not quite the same thing that's been suggested before, which was collect, curate, and share. And the idea that was a sort of cycle that if I do it, then you might do it with the things that I've shared with you. But it's not quite the same. It doesn't capture, those again are activities rather than capturing the different modes of the brain, and if I can put it like that. But it's the ability to support the different modes of the brain that seems the most interesting thing.
Well, it could be that brainstorming is more of an activity, which is actually not a word that I think I've used. So I'll have to. I don't think I have any. I don't. Which is interesting. That's how I figure it out, right? You create a tag and see if anything else is tagged to it. But yeah, there might be a set of activities like collecting and curating that is simple. A technique is really a technique. I think requires code.
Mm-hmm.
And brainstorming doesn't require code. Brainstorming requires brain power, but not code.
And perhaps it's actually an area where we should neologize, because I'm just remembering within the last 3 months I read a hilarious article pointing out that brainstorming was almost never achieved what people meant, and what they were referring to was the sort of corporate practice of putting people in a room and telling them to be creative with their boss watching. And in fact, I think what we very specifically mean is a sort of internal brainstorming process, and perhaps there's already a better word for that. A sort of solitary, singular brainstorming.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to do. I've been using.
Daydreaming.
I use TiddlyWiki the same way. Yeah. But I use Microsoft Word outline mode in a similar way, which is just more restrictive. But sometimes that's better. But yeah, it's interesting. But it might be an activity. I'll think. Thank you very much for that, Mary. I'll give some thought to that.
And while we've been, sorry, Mario, do continue.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to bring in Eric, assuming, calculating Eric's time, it's 5 to 9 in the morning in California. Eric, good morning. Are you microphoned? I think we may.
Microphone? Does this work?
Eric. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay.
Would you like to introduce yourself in the chat?
Hi, I'm Eric Schulman. I'm the developer of TiddlyTools, the administrator of the TiddlyWiki Google group, and TiddlyWiki consultant.
Indeed. Great to have you here, Eric. Thank you for joining us. And Eric, didn't mention it, but he is in California,
Yes.
thus strengthening our grip as a garland around the world. Well, we're probably halfway around the planet anyway, aren't we? How far
Eric,
apart, actually?
Pretty getting there, yeah. Eric, a pleasure to meet you. I use your stuff all the time.
Gosh, have you not met before?
I don't think we have. We've exchanged emails, I'm sure.
Indeed, Steve, the first thing that I knew about you was the promiscuity with which you were using plugins, because the most impressive thing about that very first digital supplement that you did was that you'd hauled in a number of third-party plugins, including, I'm sure, many from Eric, some of which you'd modified yourself, which I always took to be this great example of this thing that's quite important to me, the idea that our intellectual tools suit us best if they're built with our own hands. And an endless theme that I go on about is the idea that one of the beneficial things about TiddlyWiki is lowering the barriers to a particular kind of toolsmithing for the web that would normally otherwise require JavaScript and Angular and gosh knows what.
And in the educational sector, that's a very important point to keep hammering home, and I should include that in my initial presentation of what this class is about, because it really is the idea of using TiddlyWiki as a bit of what they're calling a makerspace, and there's a lot of money chasing makerspaces these days. And so what Tiddly does is creates a makerspace for the web, in a sense.
Or a makerspace in your head.
Yes, but it's and so there's money chasing makerspaces in my campus, so I want to be in that tradition. So when my provost says, "What are you doing?" I say, "I'm just doing what you asked me to do."
Well, that's corporate life as well. Is you have to kind of name check the right buzzwords in order for more senior people to recognise that what you're doing is contemporary. Got to be part of the future, can't be part of the past.
Yeah. Eric, I had a quick question, which probably should be more offline, but I love TiddlyTools, but how much of that works in TiddlyWiki 5, or is that the big issue for you in your life at the moment?
Well, the short answer to that is none of it works in TiddlyWiki 5 because TiddlyWiki 5's architecture is drastically different. However, I would estimate that about half of what's in TiddlyTools is doable in native TiddlyWiki 5 without any plugins. Much of the extensions in TiddlyTools was because there was functionality that we wanted for Classic, and that having learned the lessons from TiddlyWiki Classic, Jeremy has incorporated the ability to do those functions directly into TiddlyWiki 5's native syntax. So there's no need for plugins, although there is a need for perhaps writing the correct wiki syntax because it might not be obvious to some people how to get there. As an example, somebody recently asked about the Tiddler Tweaker plugin, which is which provides a number of features. The main feature of it is it has a multi-select list box of tiddler titles and a set of input fields that are optionally activated in order to modify those tiddlers so that you could change change the modification date, bulk remove tags, things like that. And somebody said, well, does this work in TiddlyWiki 5? And I said, well, no, it doesn't. And so I've been experimenting with how to write it in native wiki text syntax using list widgets and things to populate a list box and such. And there are still some missing gaps in the technology. For instance, multi-select list boxes need to be implemented. So I'm working on extending the select widget to implement multi-select list boxes. Once that bit of code is, now you could say that's a plugin, but it's really something that should probably get rolled back into the core. And at that point, then things like Tiddler Tweaker wouldn't be a plugin; it would simply be an implementation in TiddlyWiki 5 wiki text.
Okay. Well, I'm still looking for CSV convert or whatever that one was called because I
lived on that one. That one. There are some which are easier to adapt than others.
That one is hard.
No, not actually.
Oh, really?
There's several different.
I didn't mean to hijack the conversation, Jeremy. But so anyway,
on the contrary, this is exactly the sort of thing that is rather wonderful for me to witness. I hadn't really realised that that you hadn't had the chance to talk to Eric before, but I mean, big moment. 10 years as Eric's customer. Very happy to see you chatting.
Okay, So we're talking about CSV conversion. I've written a function which does that, and of course it's pure JavaScript. So there's no difficulty with moving that over to TiddlyWiki 5. The issue is hooking that up to some interface for letting you do the conversion. Now I had written one form of a CSV converter which was actually pure HTML in a form. Now you can't do that in TiddlyWiki 5 because it won't allow you to do embedded JavaScript within the form code. But the entire form and the code associated with it could be fairly easily re-wrappered as a TiddlyWiki 5. Probably a JavaScript macro is all it needs, really. Okay. So that's one that now one of the things that I'm ramping up to.
The reason I was asking is at an introductory level for students or individuals who are just starting with TiddlyWiki, I found that building out something in Excel or Google Sheets, people understand the relationships between two variables, and so making a table in Excel and then bringing that in. And then bringing their rows in, especially if they get that, they first bring the table in. We use CSV convert or not see it, whatever. I can't remember what it was, but something that makes their Excel. They cut and paste a bunch of cells in Excel, and then they turn into a beautiful table in TiddlyWiki. If they've written correctly, they can navigate through all their tiddlers. But then the next step is that they can write a spreadsheet, row-based spreadsheet, and they understand that each row becomes a tiddler. And I find that as an introductory technique, that really gets people to understand what tiddlers are, and they know spreadsheets, so they know rows, and then when they see them as tiddlers, they can begin to navigate them. So that's why I use it.
Right. One way of describing the structure of TiddlyWiki in a sort of a simple description, not perhaps exactly accurate, but it's a single table database with a single key index. The key is the tiddler title, and each row of the database is all the fields of the tiddler.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that's a little variation on that is that because tiddlers can have different fields in different tiddlers, it's not a homogeneous data structure. Each row can have, so you could think of it as take the set of all fields from all tiddlers as the columns, and then the rows are partially populated depending upon what type they are. But it's essentially still a single table relational database.
Yes. And so yeah,
it's easy
going in
to
that
pick your
direction.
table and then map it into tiddler structure. So as far as converting CSV goes, essentially it's a text format. It has some rules for quoting quotes and things like that in it, but essentially it's just properly packing and unpacking it. The thing that I did for importing from CSV was to set up a convention that the first row is has to have at least the tiddler name and I think an author, I said, or at least the tiddler name, and then the rest of the fields are whatever they happen to be. Of course, you should probably have a text field and creator and create all that sort of stuff, but that essentially all you needed to have was a column that was marked, that was titled tiddler title or marked title, and that would then create tiddlers, and then the remaining content was just whatever fields happen to have been specified with it.
No, and I've had some very elaborate spreadsheets that generate 200 or 300 tiddlers, which it's difficult to manage in TiddlyWiki, but easy to manage in a spreadsheet, and the students kind of understand that. And then when they see the magic in TiddlyWiki, the navigational across the cells, then or across amongst the tiddlers,
right.
And that really. It just works really nicely, and that was one of the hesitations about leaving Classic, is that I would lose some of that, plus the issues about inheritance and spaces. But I think I'm dealing with that well enough.
Yeah. Now the plan for TiddlyTools for TiddlyWiki 5 is I'm in the process now. I've been working on some private projects using TiddlyWiki 5 and have developed a number of new plugins that are TiddlyWiki 5 specific. And so I need to put together a TiddlyTools for TiddlyWiki 5 that presents those new plugins. And of course, once I have that there, it will be relatively straightforward to start migrating older plugins from Classic over to 5. And what I'm trying to do is come up with the short list of plugins which are really, really useful. As opposed to the ones, yes, I have over 400 bits and pieces on TiddlyTools. And as I said, about half of them are probably obsolete because TiddlyWiki 5 supports them natively. So out of the remaining half, which ones are the actual, gold items that really should be done first? And I think converting from CSV, being that it's really not very Tiddly dependent. Most of the code in it is about parsing this big block of text and turning it into thing, and then the actual creating a tiddler is once you've got all the fields collected, it's one call, create tiddler, and boom, done. So so it shouldn't be too difficult to put that on the short list of things to be converted. Now one of the questions is how to make use of it.
Can I quickly jump in for a second, Eric? So sorry. But just to clarify, that there is a CSV export built into TiddlyWiki 5, which works in quite a useful way. So if in the sidebar you go to the Tools tab, and then select Export All and select the CSV format, then if you open that CSV file in a spreadsheet, well, gosh, perhaps I should. I'll screen share, because this is quite an interesting discussion, but forgive me for sidetracking, but you'll see where I'm going in a second. But just to make sure that what I'm saying is clear, so the how to do an export, you export all CSV file, and then in my case it asks you for a name for the file, and when I open it. In my case, it's going to open in an app called Numbers. So the spreadsheet's got a field name across the top. So all the fields in that selection of tiddlers are present there, and obviously the cells are populated for the tiddlers that have that field, and tiddler title is the left-hand column. And the only reason I was showing that is a really terrific use case is to be able to export all your tiddlers to a spreadsheet, to then be able to do in the spreadsheet some of the things that spreadsheets are great at, and then to be able to import them all back into an empty TiddlyWiki. And
the import.
Exactly. The challenge at the moment is that those files can't be imported. So amongst so that was why this was relevant, is that amongst everything else, Eric, if you are going to do CSV support, if you make it so that we can re-import those modified CSV files.
Jeremy, the CSV to tiddler conversion is very straightforward. Obviously, it's just read the row, get the fields, bundle it all up, create tiddler. What I'm thinking is that this should be added as a kind of import handler. If you drop a CSV file, it should be able to say, hey, it's time to unpack this and do what it does. It's just like if you dropped a JSON file or even a TiddlyWiki file. It's just another container.
In terms of CSV support in the core, there is support for CSV tiddlers, as in tiddlers with text-CSV as their data type. They're displayed in a tabular format already. What we don't have is exactly what you suggested, an import handler. So that's actually, in TiddlyWiki terms, it's a deserializer for CSV files. I have been doing some recent work with CSV files, but I've found that I've ended up using an off-the-shelf open source library for manipulating CSV files, because depending on the CSV files you're working with, some of the real-world CSV files that you get are truly terrible with some odd edge cases. But if one's only working with CSV files that one's generated oneself, then obviously much easier.
Yep.
But great.
But so getting back to the general topic, so that CSV as a format, we have the ability to export it, but not do the full round trip yet.
That's right.
So that's obviously just a missing piece of the story there, because obviously you've done most of it. So it seems to me that writing a deserializer is the right way to go with this, so that it wouldn't be some special off to the side TiddlyTools, because I have a TiddlyTools form where you basically just copy and paste your CSV into it and then hit a button, and that's sort of half manual process. What I'd really like to do is to see where you can just take a CSV file and just drag and drop it and have it realize that there are tiddlers inside it and go ahead and unpack them. So a deserializer sounds like exactly the right way to go for that bit of functionality. Now, getting back to the bigger question of what's on TiddlyTools and what can be done with it, what I'm going to be asking the community to do is to start voting, finger quotes, voting for which TiddlyTools plugins are the most important ones to get that functionality over to TiddlyWiki 5. And then, of course, the question is which ones of those should be more of a port versus a complete re-implementation. Like, for instance, the Tiddler Tweaker is really more an re-implementation as wiki text with a couple of service functions behind it. So some of them are going to be a rewrite, some of them are going to be more of a port. It depends upon how much of the code from the old plugin was TiddlyWiki independent, as it were. How much of it was just pure JavaScript versus stuff that was very tied into the way the core works. So I expect that over the next few months, hopefully by the end of the year, I should have a TiddlyTools for TiddlyWiki 5 published, even if it's just a bare bones. And then over the course of the next, 6 months to a year, migrate away from TiddlyTools to TiddlyTools 5 and have as much as possible done, so that maybe by the end of the end of this coming year, all the goodies are there.
Cool. Thanks.
Eric, that sounds great. Although I must say, every time I see your work on the manual, I realize that hidden inside there is, in fact, a substantial chunk of the eventual TiddlyTools for TiddlyWiki 5.
Well, yes. Let me address that briefly. In the manual, which is posted online but isn't widely advertised, because it's still sort of in progress and has parts, and I don't. Anyway, the manual has a couple of really nice things that I've worked on for it. One is a completely written from the ground up new version of the table of contents macros. And some of the things that it handles better is it handles looping, so that if you have a tiddler tagged with the name of one of its parents, but not necessarily the root of the tree, it won't go into infinite recursion. And it also handles automatically opening and closing the current branch of the tree, so that you don't actually have to sort of find where you are. It can automatically highlight and show you where you are in the tree. So it gives a lot of interactivity there. And it also incorporates a favorites feature, so that you can mark any tiddler as a favorite. And it keeps a list of favorites. So that's the table of contents. But there are other things I've done also. For example, in TWclassic, settings were saved as cookie values. Now, this was a difficulty for people when they'd say, why aren't my settings the same wherever I go? And it's because the settings are domain and browser specific, so that your settings didn't travel with your document. So in Classic, for TiddlyTools, I created a cookie manager that wrote the cookie values into a tiddler as well, so that they could travel with the document. In TiddlyWiki 5, settings on all things in TiddlyWiki 5 are stored in tiddlers, and so settings travel with the document by default, and there aren't any cookies. Which is fine, because for most use cases, that's exactly what people want. But for the book, for example, I wanted to be able to have people mark things as favorites, but not have to save the file in order to have that data stored. So I implemented the inverse of what used to be. So now, instead of having a plugin which takes the cookie values and remembers them in a tiddler, I have a plugin which takes values stored in tiddlers and shadows them into cookies. The result is that you can have values which you change during one session online, and then without saving the online document and opening that one, when you come back, some of the changed values have been synced into cookies, and at load time, it automatically reads the cookies and updates the tiddler values in the document, overlaying whatever was the saved value, essentially giving you persistence without saving. The idea is that this is not for the person who owns the document. This is for, say, visitors to an online document where you want to remember some statefulness about what activities they were doing last session and restore them the next session. Preferences and display options and things like that. So I've implemented a cookie plugin, which gives back that ability to have these sort of temporary per-user, bound-to-the-browser settings.
And I also know that Eric is doing some work for a client that's also in TiddlyWiki 5, and so is also generating. So I think for all those people out there looking forward to TiddlyTools for TiddlyWiki 5, Eric's already got a treasure trove of stuff, and I think I
got some good stuff there. One of the really good ones
is that manual online now? Parts of it, or whatever?
It is actually. If you want to, and let me see. Oh, I'm on the tablet. I don't have any way to do text or anything here, so I just have to say it to you.
That's fine.
It's tiddlytools.github.io/InsideTW with a capital I and a capital TW.
Okay.
And so you should be able to bring that up right now.
I have it open here.
Yep, I do. Great, thanks.
Okay, and so there's an. Okay, so now, unfortunately, I can't screencast or anything, but I'll walk you through this here. Jeremy, you want to screencast this?
Yeah. Well, okay. No, Steve. Sorry. Why? Since it's Steve that's.
All right. Well, anyone, someone cast it for me.
Why don't you screen share?
That means I have to find where that. Hang
on.
I've got it. No, I've got it.
Okay. Cool.
That's not showcase. It's.
I see your browser.
Yeah, it's coming.
And.
Nope, that's not it. There it is.
There it is. Okay. Above the table of contents area, you will see some icons. The third one in is a book with a star on it. Click on it and choose Parts List. Okay, now we are looking at the things that make up this, the internals of the book. And there's a number of different sections that are specific to the book, but there are parts here which are functionality which will become TiddlyTools plugins separate from the book. One of them is the talk stuff, which you can see, twbook/talk. And I've been working on preparing those to make them completely portable so they don't have any dependencies on any style sheets that I've done for the book or anything like that. So they're almost, but not quite ready to go for the talk. Another one you see is the cookies, the cookie section there. And you can see there's a number of filters and macros that have been written for that to get the cookie, set a cookie, etc. And let's see what else is really good. Oh, the left bar, the area that you see with the table of contents on the left of the page is called the left bar. And so the table of contents is just that intersection of the left bar. And then the left bar, it's, yeah, and there you go. You can open and close individual panels. If you click on a topic, you'll notice that it does highlight it. Mm-hmm. And if you then navigate to somewhere else, you'll see that the tree will actually expand and collapse as you navigate.
I'm not seeing that.
Okay, well, go to the Introduction to TiddlyWiki topic. Okay, yeah, go there. Now, go ahead and click on anything in the table of contents area in the side there, and it will jump right to it.
Yep.
Okay, and now you'll notice that you have opened the Introduction to TiddlyWiki branch of the tree. You see it has a down arrow next to it.
Yeah.
Okay, all those ones that are down arrowed, if you turn them so that they're no longer down arrows, it will collapse that section of the tree, obviously. But it will automatically, if you don't open up any branches, so you close them all down, and then you navigate to a tiddler, it will open the correct branch for you.
Ah, very nice.
Okay, so
where did your additional icons come from, Eric? Are they bitmaps or SVGs?
They are SVGs, and they came from Flaticon. As a matter of fact, if you go into the legal statements, you'll see the link to Flaticon, because I did the right thing.
Yeah, very good.
Excellent. Nice. And this is a TiddlyWiki, obviously.
This is all TiddlyWiki.
Obviously, of course, right.
Okay, so now you see the star on the right next to each. Yeah, that one there. If you can use that to toggle, which is, and then anything that you toggle that way is then in your favorites list up at the top in that pop down.
Very nice.
It's pretty sweet, Eric. I have
Nice.
kind of teased Eric in the past because there is a risk that he's been distracted from the job of writing the book by writing the tools that are needed to present the book. But of course,
yes, definitely.
We all win
Now,
because particularly things like the table of contents jumping to the right position. I think that's
Yeah. Now let me point out some of the things you're clicking on there. That heading up at the top of each tiddler has the next and previous buttons to navigate through the siblings in the tree. So whatever your related topics are, you can flip back and forth between the topics of that section. And then when you get to the end of that section, you're going up to the next section. And then so if you keep hitting that same button that you're hitting now, you'll actually walk through most of the document.
Yep. Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Now let's see. What else do we have in here that's...
That's great. Thanks.
Oh, wait. One more thing here. Upper right corner of the document, there's a gear icon.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And you click on that, you'll see I've implemented some settings and things. Click on click on a color swatch and choose something else for it, and you can change the... Try page background on that one, or window background. Yeah, that'll give you one. There you go. Now, those settings...
My students love this, by the way, because this... everybody loves being able to change the colors. So. Of
course. Now, those settings are stored in a configuration tiddler that keeps track of all of your choices, but the values in that configuration tiddler are being shadowed as cookies, so that if you reload this document, your changed display settings will persist.
Okay, yeah.
But you didn't save the document.
Right.
So that's where cookies come in to give you that.
Yeah, okay.
Right. That's the advantage of cookies there, is that normally cookies are sort of old school and poo-pooed, but...
Nice.
Oh, that one you just clicked will take a little while. Okay, that last button you clicked was the show all button.
Oh.
Okay, when you do that, it actually will. So many little features here. If you click on the show all button and then wait for it to render, now you scroll down the page and you'll see it's every part of the document. So you can basically close the left bar and then print this, and you'll print out the whole book.
Right. Nice. So maybe I should write mine in this.
Perhaps. My good friend who comes by and gives me feedback on this has been bugging me for months to get a version of this with no content in it so that he can start using it.
Well, now add me to that list.
Okay.
Because it's quite interesting, actually. But I mean, this is interesting. Yeah, I could write instead of writing on top of tiddlywiki.com, I could write on top of this. But that's interesting. I mean, that might be the next version. But I could certainly refer people to this once you've released it.
Right. Now, one of the interesting things here is that the table of contents macro I've written uses the same way of representing the hierarchy that the core's table of contents does. You know, just using tagging to indicate children. And so if you're developing a table of contents hierarchy using regular TiddlyWiki, it should be drag and drop, and it'll show up in this one.
Oh, I'm still broadcasting, aren't I? I forgot.
Oops.
I forgot. I do have a meeting at 12:30, so I should probably go to that soon. I was just checking my calendar. Yeah. Now I have no idea where I was, so I'm going to stop sharing because I...
There you go.
I must say, I've recently been, for my day job, I've been doing more Skyping than at any other time in my career, and the number of ways that it is possible to mess up whilst screencasting or by answering a call and not realizing the camera is going to switch straight on. Oh, yes. We've been joined by Jed. Let me... Jed, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself in the usual way, if your microphone?
I think the microphone...
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Then, hello, I'm Jed.
Oh no, we lost you, Jed. We only got the first 3 words.
Right. Hello, I'm Jed. Well, that's good. This has been great, and I hope to join these in the future, depending on my schedule. But I do have to run to a important meeting of an unimportant meeting of the Graduate Council. It's one of the, yes, whatever, the life of the academic committees. Eric, it's great to meet you, and everyone else. It's great to chat with you, and nice to see you again, Jeremy. And Jed, I hope you come back.
Cool. We'll speak to you soon.
Okay, great. Yep.
Bye. Bye. Excellent, great. Jed is... Jed, hi. How... We only got as far as you saying, hello, I'm Jed, and then you cut out. You're showing us on mute at the moment, Jed. Oh, no, you're not.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I am currently living in Paris. Used to be in the US. I use TiddlyWiki to organize my PhD thesis work. And just as a general toy, I have in my socks at tiddlytools.com, which I sporadically update, and I make lots of stuff. So,
indeed, one of the more prolific members of the community. And so the last Hangout on Saturday, due to our crazy schedule at the moment, they're very close, have been very close together. Jed started to show some stuff, and then I think we abandoned due to those connection problems, didn't we? So it would be awesome if you'd like to pick that up again.
yeah, I have it here. My connection is better today than it was before, but it's still dropping out every so often.
I shall turn my video off in the vague, superstitious hope that that might help.
Should I do that now?
Yeah, go for it, Jed. Thank you.
Okay. Did that work?
We're not seeing the telltale. Yes, I just saw the icon of screen sharing and then it flicked away again.
Well, maybe I have another problem that. This is, well, yeah, it's in a different browser. Okay, let's try that. Nope.
And then we're still not seeing anything. In fact, it looks like we've... Oh, again, for a fraction of a second, I saw the screen share icon overlaid over your avatar, and then it went again.
Okay, I have no idea what's going on now. That normally works. So
I think it's probably a bandwidth problem. So, are you connected with Wi-Fi?
yeah, unfortunately, that's why I've been having connection problems too.
But in fact, Jed's video picture is coming through as HD for me. So if it was a poor quality, I mean, if it was a truly hopeless connection, I think Hangouts would have downgraded you to a non-HD video stream, wouldn't they? Yeah, or maybe the HD applies to me, if you see what I mean.
Switch off the camera and just use screen sharing. Try this.
I've been trying to share different bits of my screen, and it has not been working.
I've only ever been able to share the whole screen in the past.
Well, I've tried.
Because I have really big problems even understanding something what Jed says. So I see sometimes HD, and most of the time I have no sound.
Yes, how annoying. Is this just you happen to have got the short straw of poor domestic Wi-Fi, Jed?
He's gone already.
There was a thing in the papers this morning that your Christmas tree lights can slow down your Wi-Fi. So maybe we'll need to turn off our Christmas tree lights. Which actually, that does kind of make sense. I mean, they tend to be rather cheaply engineered, don't they? So, Jed, perhaps we'll do something else for a moment or two, and then that'll give you a chance to run some more experiments. Jed's now back under a new identity. Jed, hi.
Hi. Yeah, that was my connection dropping out. So why don't we continue the Hangout and I'll try to troubleshoot this, and if I get it to work, I will bug you guys.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's very frustrating, I must say, because in the past, well, you know, screen sharing actually seems to work a bit better than the video sharing on a poor connection. Anyway, let's just having a quick look at the list. The thing at the top of my list is that I need to release 5.1.10. We touched on this last week, I think. It's now a ridiculously long time since 5.1.9. One of the things that was holding 5.1.10 back was wanting to settle the discussion about the search results, and there's still, before 5.1.10 goes out the door, is still the best possible time for any more feedback or thoughts on that topic. But my plan is, as I think I said before, to do the release in the next week or two. I'm currently just about to get a new release of TiddlyDesktop out, which is it's a refinement of what I showed a couple of weeks ago. It's the version of TiddlyDesktop that has support for wiki folders let's say preliminary initial support for wiki folders with some fairly significant limitations that make it a bit less useful than I would like. And I think I touched on the last time in the Hangout that I'm beginning to see that part of what's holding me back with TiddlyDesktop may be NWJS, which is the current. Jed, we just saw a flash of your screen, so I better turn my video off swiftly. Yes, Jed, over to you. I hadn't, of course, this is what's going to happen. So, Jed, we can see your screen now, but we can't hear you. So, hilariously, we're going to have one or the other, by the look of it. I can hear, there's background hum, which kind of sounds like it's coming from you.
There was no sound.
Jed, I think I muted you, and now, in order to see if yours was the background noise, and I can't unmute you, I think you have to unmute yourself. Yes, you do. That makes sense. It would be ridiculous if I could mute you and then unmute you without your consent. But Jed, can we hear you?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, you were there, but very quiet. Perfect. Let's
go. I will try to speak loudly. So, anyway, as a bit of background, I have been working to make the snap.js graphics library work in TiddlyWiki. Somebody on the group was playing with it, and I was just planning on poking it, and then other people do this, and I got kind of carried away. So, sorry if that ended it. But, so far what I have is a very simple widget that can be used as a kind of authoring tool. I'm going to expand on it a lot later. And so yeah, right now you can add, or you can make a SVG service, add shapes to it, drag the shapes around, and the part about this that is, I guess, important is that all of the location and other data for the shapes is stored in tiddlers. So it is accessible by the rest of the wiki. And
I think, Jed, we might have a connection drop out. Oh, no, you're back.
Okay. Oh, well, did you get any of that?
We did, right up to, I think, right up to the very end. So you've got individual tiddlers representing shapes on the SVG canvas. You've got maybe a view template giving you for those tiddlers so that you can edit their parameters.
Yes, and it is, if you let things drag, then the tiddlers are updated to store that information, so you can keep the state of the image in the wiki.
Can you do the other thing and edit one of the paths or something?
And then this is that green circle. You can change the parameters here, and this is just changing the value in fields, and you can make it so that right now it's draggable, or we can uncheck that and then it's not draggable. So right now there is a simple tool to add these two surfaces, and just actually late last time I was working on this, I updated this so you can have more than one surface, and unfortunately that broke some of it, but most of it works.
Can you use the entire page as the surface, or is it always within a tiddler?
The way it's set right now, it is always inside the tiddler.
But you could transclude that in the page template, I guess, if you wanted to display shapes outside of a tiddler boundary. Okay. I must say, I'd clicked through to the demo. I hadn't quite realized what you'd done, but it's very cool. Very cool. Did you have, Jed, a purpose in mind yourself for these experiments with snap.js? Is there anything that you plan to do with it?
Well, I was before trying to make the D3 plugin work better with TiddlyWiki, and having very little success with that. So this one seems like a much more straightforward implementation as far as connecting it to TiddlyWiki. So, and
your interest is to be able to do bar charts and such.
Yeah, and also I kind of want to see if I can use this to make some sort of very simple graphical game in TiddlyWiki, because it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I made a little bar chart demo here that just as a quick example of something that could be useful to use this for this. So right now that's very simple, and it will require other things to make it continue working. Now, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to show this actually is this. The way that this works, I think, is terrible in that it uses a combination of wiki text and JavaScript to build. If you copy this JavaScript and put it into another page that has a snap.js library, then you'll get the bar chart that I think I disclosed. But so that part's neat. Unfortunately, if you type JavaScript into this tiddler, then that JavaScript will also run. So you can type JavaScript into a tiddler, and whatever you want, and it will run.
Oh, Jed, we lost the last bit after you can type whatever JavaScript you like in.
Oh, I think that is probably a horrible security concern, and I have been looking into changing that.
But here it's interesting that the actual JavaScript text is quite declarative. What's going on here? I think one might be able to devise a way to make it entirely declarative.
Yeah. And I think if this JavaScript really executes, then there is something wrong with the sanitation process.
But the JavaScript does execute. Jed's widget basically does an eval of tiddler text.
Yes, the JavaScript is built using wiki text, and then that wiki text is rendered, and the output of that rendering is evaluated by the JavaScript. It was the...
Oh, why do you bother with the wikification stage? That's interesting. You want to be able to generate the JavaScript.
I'm sorry, you didn't hear that.
I was asking why you wanted a wikification stage for the processing of the JavaScript fragments, and I assume it's because you want to use wiki text, list widgets, and so on to generate repetitive fragments of JavaScript. Is that the idea?
Yes, there was, in order to make the surfaces, actually I'm hoping somebody here can give me the solution to this. In order to make multiple surfaces, they need to have, there needs to be a variable that is named for each surface. And right now, there's SVG image 1, and that's the name of the surface, and all this JavaScript goes with that. I can't figure out how in the widget to take it inside JavaScript. I'm certain there's a way to do this, but right now the only way I figured out how to do it is using the eval function, which, as we said, is kind of terrible. Did I lose people?
And yeah, I'm on the wrong window. No, I think that's a really interesting technique. I mean, you're absolutely right to be aware of the dangers of, because it's not a danger to you, if you see what I mean. It's a danger to users of your plugin, it's certainly worth thinking through everything you can do to kind of mitigate the concern. But I think it's a really interesting technique. I mean, it's kind of frustrating that I've got to be very cautious and, if you like, pessimistic, I think, in making the core. But this is exactly the kind of thing that it's awesome that we can explore in plugins, and that's great. You've made it into a Christmas Boyd. TiddlyWiki art. But so there was a moment when I couldn't quite hear your answer because the sound was poor at the time. But I'm curious what kinds of things you mentioned. Oh no, you did sort of answer. You mentioned being able to do bar charts and so on, and I think you were saying being able to do a graphics editor, a general purpose graphics editor. Is that the idea?
Yes. If the pie in the sky probably never going to have.
Annoyingly, we lost a fair bit of you there, Jed. Yeah, no, you came back just to go again. Sorry, try again.
So I would like to make something so I can make little SVG animations using this, and I think that being able to make a little SVG interactive story with graphical elements to it would be really interesting, and is kind of what I wanted to do back when I started the interactive fiction engine with TiddlyWiki.
The Zork thing was great. I mean, again, you are highly productive at making this stuff. In terms of SVG support, obviously, I would love there to be a decent SVG editor available as a plugin. Would be really cool to the extent that you go in that direction. But I'm also really, so in thinking about TiddlyWiki documentation, I think that there are diagrams that would help. And an example of a diagram that I think would be quite useful for TiddlyWiki is one that just kind of breaks down the repository hierarchically and explaining what each thing is for. And there's an enormous, every time I sit down with a graphics editor to produce graphics like that, it's the most ginormous pain because there's a lot of text to copy and paste from my code editor to the graphics editor, and it's an incredibly manual process. So I'm very interested in being able to automatically generate simple types of diagram from text. So here, your text primitives, so to speak, are the fields of tiddlers. But I'd be interested in, for instance, generating SVG elements from a table of contents. So a table of contents gives us a hierarchical relationship between the items, and so showing that via containment is what I'm getting at, so that you'd get one big box that contains two slightly smaller boxes, and each of those contains a series of further boxes. And then just by being able to expand and collapse a box so that whether or not you show its children, I think those are quite a nice class of diagram for explaining things like software.
Yes, that should be possible. Actually, the snap.js library is very easy to use, and unfortunately, the documentation on it is kind of terrible in the fact that it's almost non-existent. So all of this has been by trial and error. But yeah, the documentation in its entirety is a function reference without any description of the functions.
Okay.
Yeah, there's also a Google group, but I have not been able to find too much on there. So.
Well, I mean, the great thing is, TiddlyWiki 5 has used SVG right from the beginning when I started work in 2010. And then it was incredibly rare to use SVG at all. And that was when I did all my discovery about how magical and amazing SVG was. And oh my gosh, here's graphics that you can apply CSS to, and so on. But of course, the great thing over the last 5 years is this profusion of tools and understanding of SVG. I must say, what you're doing in the background there, Jed, does illustrate how kind of compelling and fun it is to move shapes around. Going back to what Steve was saying, I think mostly before you joined, Jed, when we were talking about hypertext, this just again makes me one of the marvelous opportunities we have is this idea of making graphics a first-class citizen with the text. And I think what you've got here, when you compare it to some of the SVG demos on tiddlywiki.com, is a marked sort of improvement, increase in the extent to which we are a graphical content, as because here your SVG example is in effect a transclusion of those 4 shapes, isn't it? 5 shapes.
Jed, how big is the snap.js library?
I'm sorry, you cut out there for a second. What was that?
How big is the snap.js library?
Oh, I do not remember. I think it was rather large as far as the plugins go. Tens of kilobytes, I know that.
Okay, that's not big. Yeah, okay.
So, like as far as JavaScript things go, no, it's not all that big. But it, actually, let me check here. How do we? Well, okay, this is a wiki that I'm poking around is 1.7 megabytes. So, and it's blank other than that. So probably about 150 or so, I think.
Okay.
I can check that here if you. As much as relatively self-explanatory, and I guess I can give a link for the Hangout wiki so that people can actually get the link to this. But unless somebody wants to see something, I think that's my demo. Hello?
Hi, Jed. Sorry, I'm. Somebody else is. I'm just helping somebody else try to join the Hangout in the background. Carlos is here, and if we can, we'll get him in. He says he's eager to ask Eric a question, and Mario. And he says he's late for school. He's installing a plugin now, and he's just saying hi. So,
someone had a question for me?
Yes, it's you may remember Carlos Duarte, who designed the TiddlyWiki fish logo. He just contacted me on Hangouts in the background. He was trying to get into the Hangout because he wants to talk to both you and Mario, but then he's just realised that he has to go to school. Although by school, of course, he means grown-up school.
Yeah, I remember Carlos. He made the poopy fish.
That's right. Yes, and in fact has done quite a few bits and bobs, as I remember. So I need to close in about 10 minutes. The next Hangout is scheduled for, it says checking before I'm pretty sure it's next Tuesday, so it's scheduled for, scheduled for Tuesday the 8th, and I will endeavour to give people more warning. I'll send out a proper invitation on the groups. Oh, Carlos has joined. Carlos, hi. How are you doing? Carlos, perhaps you don't have a microphone. Hello, Carlos, you do have a microphone. You're on mute at the moment, Carlos.
Hopefully.
Yes, we heard you. I think then it muted again. I think because there's quite a lot of background noise, you might have volume turned up quite high or something.
Oh, actually.
Oh no, that's better. Perfect.
Yeah.
Carlos, hi. Welcome to the Hangout. Would you like to please introduce yourself, your name and where you're from, and say something about your involvement with TiddlyWiki?
Okay, well, I don't know, my name is Carlos, I'm 36, I'm studying linguistics. I've been a TiddlyWiki user for about, I don't know how long it's been, like since 2002 or 3 or so.
I think quite a long time.
Yeah.
I can check in my email to find out how long.
Yeah. And I don't know. I've been using it. I've been using TiddlyWiki a lot, like since the last 3 years in school.
Yeah.
Doing research regarding all kinds of things actually. But right now it's been an invaluable tool when doing research on discourse analysis and other things.
Discourse analysis. The discourse is arguments, is it? That's two people talking and analyzing how the argument progresses or something.
Something like that. Yeah. It's quite deep and it's very abstract, so it's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not going out and studying actual discourses that you're witnessing. You're looking at the rules of engagement for discourse as Okay. Excuse my very crude summary of no doubt dozens of people's lifetimes worth of work. So you said in the Hangouts that you were keen to ask, I think, both Mario and Eric a question, one or the other.
I've just this machine actually is the machine I'm using right now. It's probably like 3 years old or 4 years old. And I really can't run TiddlyWiki 5 on it. So, and I'm keen on using TiddlyWiki for community projects running on sort of older or just less powerful hardware. So I'm still interested in TiddlyWiki 2. 2.8.1, I think it was the last upgrade. Somehow. Maybe not having like the brunt of the development initiative or whatever it's called, like the resources, obviously,
effort.
You know, it's at the end of its line, and I'm aware of that, and for good reason. But in this particular case, I'd really like to ask Eric for some I'm a student right now, and I'm Mexican, so it's not a very economically prosperous country. But I'm willing to shell some resources, some financial
Okay,
resources.
let me slow your roll here. Don't worry about what it would cost, blah 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 blah. Okay, say what it
Okay.
is you want to do, because if it's easy, I'll just do it. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Eric. Well, yeah, I don't know. Okay, I'll just say it first, and then I'll continue kissing your feet in a moment. But yeah, but I need there's this sort of transclusion thing. It's called I have it right here. It's called the embed tiddlers. So that's the thing, and I need some functionality to do. There's a I just came into the conversation like not unprepared. So I'm sorry if I'm not really elaborating on this very.
Just take your time, think it through, relax. It's okay. You don't have to be all smooth, whatever. Yeah. Okay. So first, I want to say embed tiddlers. I haven't brought it up on the screen yet to refresh my memory, but I'm pretty sure embed tiddlers is actually a transclusion itself.
Right.
Okay, which means that it's basically a sort of a wiki text script, if you will, that, and if I remember correctly, its goal is to bring in a whole set of tiddlers, a list of tiddlers,
Yes.
and include a whole list of tiddlers. Because it's written as a transclusion, it's something that's relatively easy to tweak for your own purposes. So if the embed tiddlers, if you want to add something to it, I can probably just help you to tweak the copy you have to make it do what you want.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
unlike plugins, which are written in JavaScript and it's all code and everything, transclusions are often written in a combination of wiki text and a little bit of code where needed.
Right.
So what is it that you wanted to do differently?
Yeah, I just there's an @ sign. You have like the second. I shared the link on the back channel there, and there's on the usage. There's a second example that has like an @ sign to like load. I think it's to load like.
Let me bring up my local copy here. And by the way, I can't follow any other links you have because I'm on the tablet. So it doesn't give you the ability to do all that. It's kind of triple. So, but let me just bring up the script and see what's okay. The second example.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, tiddler embed tiddlers with @tiddler name. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I think the problem is, like, if I remember correctly.
Guys, I'm really clear at this point. So can I leave you to continue the discussion? But before we do, let's just say goodbye to all of the viewers, and then, as you'll have discovered before, you'll be able to carry on for as long as you need. So apologies for needing to drop off, but for the moment, thank you very much to everybody for joining me today. Very much appreciated. Carlos, great to see you, and do please, there's another one next week, so perhaps you'll be able to join us then. And everybody, thank you very much. And as I say, I'll stop the broadcast now, but we'll still be connected to continue the discussion. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.